Welcome back to Racing. Well, we've got Karl Fredrickson, racing editor, Speedway Illustrated, with us again.
Thank you for having me, Roger.
Karl, it's great to have you here. You know, we're going to talk about something today that I haven't seen too many racers that can do without it, sponsorship.
Yeah, it's always a tough thing, but you know, it can be a blessing or a curse when you work with sponsorships, and it's all up to you and how you approach your sponsorship package on your race team. But initially, the best way to attract a sponsor is by recognizing his perspective from his side of the table. So when you walk in, you sit down, and you say, don't think about what the sponsor can do for you, think about what you can do for the sponsor. And that's how you build value into the package, because that's what really the guy on the other side of the table needs to know. What is this race team going to do for me?
And that's what it has to be today. I mean, the whole sponsorship landscape has changed drastically over the last few years. I mean, these companies, you know, we used to see what we called angel sponsors, just like racing, gave money out for no return, basically. But now, I mean, all companies need to see a return.
Sure. Well, what you need to do is think about what you can do for a local type sponsor, and then do a good job of it.
And you just mentioned something very important there too, when you said local type sponsor. So, you know, if you're running at just a local area, then go after the companies that market in that area. If you run a touring area, you might be able to expand that out, but don't go to a huge corporation that's nationwide when you're running at 3 tracks.
Right.
You've got to match that marketing area up to the geographic area where you're racing.
Sure, absolutely. And match what you can provide as well. I mean, be realistic in what you have to offer. That's an important aspect, because what you do is you sit down and you say, all right, here's really what they can get out of their participation. Now, a car going by 100 miles an hour on a short track is not going to do too much for what the manufacturer or the restaurant or whatever it is you've approached, but it's what you do maybe away from the track, and what you do at the track complements both efforts.
Exactly, being creative.
Yeah, there's a lot out there too. I mean, there are a lot of different types of sponsorships you can get these days, especially with a race car. I mean, there's product sponsorships from manufacturers. There are local type restaurant sorts of sponsorships, or car dealerships, and work your way to see what you can offer. I mean, there hasn't been more than one racing team who's been sponsored, say, by an oil company because their family owned a car dealership, and that car dealership switched to that brand of oil. So they all work together and figure out what you can do to offer the manufacturer.
Yep. Partnering companies together is a real good way to do it, and you know, that way it helps build the revenue for that company immediately, because now they've got a new customer they're buying from, and you get the sponsorship, everybody's happy. It all works great that way.
Sure. And if you have a good-looking sponsorship, you keep a good-looking car, you have a nice prominent logo on your race car, everybody at the track, including the track owner, is going to recognize that. So be careful on how you conduct yourself.
And you know, today you're talking about doing the promotions and different things like that. I mean, that is probably 90% of the sponsorship today. You know, that's what they're looking at. It's not so much the car running around the track, it's everything you can do for them away from the track. Fortunately, we're in a sport where we do have a lot of fans watching us do our hobby.
Sure.
And you know, there are good-sized audiences there, so we have something to sell. But still yet, just that at the track isn't enough alone. We still got to get outside of that and do other things for them.
Sure.
And even if you're not selling to the fans, like a product, you'd be selling to like the race car drivers around you, even like the Coleman Racing Hubs. I mean, they're a great part, but you can't just take.
Are you sponsored on?
Coleman Racing,
okay,
with pro-like racing products. But you can't just hang on to them and not tell the drivers around you. So
because you share the information with
and
other
then sell
teams.
the product for the
Right,
sponsor.
and that's what they're looking for. And when I was in doing marketing at manufacturer, that was really what I looked for too. I mean, that guy that was respected by the other teams out there and would talk about the product and help push the product.
That's absolutely, it's putting yourself on the other side of the table, and what does the manufacturer get out of it? And the manufacturer does not think, gee, I'd like to send some product out for free of charge and have the recipient not tell anyone how good my stuff is. That's not what they're in it for. But if you're the type of person who can recognize what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, Glenn Myers, as you mentioned, Coleman, he told me one time, he said, you know, racers need to remember that most of the people in this industry came from auto racing. They were racers before. We know what it takes to win championships. We know how expensive it is to race. But you have to understand that we're not in business to pay for your hobby. So what you do to start is you start by being a customer. And that's how you develop a relationship. If when your product manufacturer is what you're after, you're working with a company, you call them up, you order some parts, and you have to pay for them. They're in business.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, if you go straight out to a company and say, you've never been a customer, and say to them, I'd like to have your product for free. Well, you've just placed a value on their product and what it's worth to you.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Good point. That's not a real impressive
No.
way to start out.
But if you start off as a customer and then you do follow up, you give them some feedback. Did the springs maintain their free height for as long as you own them? Yes. Well, okay. Now you've got something to talk about. Did the parts arrive on time? Were they the ones you ordered? Well, that can be worthy of a thank you note. Send that off to the guy you ordered it from. That will get around the company. It's a step towards that relationship, because once you develop it and you build it, eventually a company like Coleman, which is always developing new products, is going to call you up and say, hey, we're trying something new. It's not necessarily ready for the market. Are you willing to try this new item?
And
yeah,
it can
send
balloon, and even more than that too, because a lot of times, a lot of the marketing people in all the different companies out there talk back and forth, and somebody out in this company in Iowa might say, well, I've got this real good racer here that, okay, I'll go on that car too.
Yeah, and don't forget, there's nothing manufacturers like to do more than brag, right? So when you're renting races with Coleman products, Coleman's out there at the trade show telling the other guys, hey, Dalton picked off the feature for us down at New Smyrna last week. And that, oh, he did he? Well, now you're being spread through the industry as a race winner. And that's the best way to showcase new components, because it tells the company two things. One, you're up on your game. You know what you're doing. You're working hard. You're racing. And number two, people are out there talking about you.
Well, we'll be back with more on Racing TV. We'll be back with more on Racing TV.
Welcome back. Okay, Carl, now let's start talking a little bit about how to approach a sponsor.
Sure. Important part is to make sure that you don't forget what you're there to do. You've got to present your race team as a viable option for marketing this company. So you've got to have a plan, some materials to showcase what you can offer, and put a price on it. I mean, we all like to get as much as we can, but don't go in without what it costs. I mean, when you go to purchase something, you want to know how much it costs. Well, so does any company that might get involved in your race car. And don't oversell or undersell your ability. Tell them what you'll do, and then do it. So what you've got to do is make sure that you go in. You may be facing an ad council, a group of, say, parts stores that gather in a region, and they pool together some money, and they spend it in agreement, meaning that they all sit down on a few times a year and discuss where they should be spending their ad dollars. And if you get to be part of that meeting, go in prepared with what you think they would want to know. And the way to figure that out is by imagining yourself on the other side of the table, saying, okay, I own, or I'm a franchise owner of a parts store. I want to get the most out of this ad pool money that I have to pay into. How do I get that most bang for my buck? By being involved in a race team? Well, maybe. So when the team comes in, and that's you in this case, you've got to be ready for some materials of maybe some videotape, maybe some magazine clippings, maybe some things that have shown the logo on your race car, or some things your team has been involved in away from the racetrack. You can get involved with charitable events, things that make a company look good, because and do it if it means something to you. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it, because that's hollow and nobody wants to be involved with that. But get involved and know what they're going to be buying, so that when they sit down, they say, okay, this kind of team does this, this, and this. They're involved with the community. They race, with a clean race car, a clean-looking crew, good reputation on the driver and every crew member, and they're active with their sponsorships. Okay, we'll get a lot out of this, but you're going to put people off if what you're sending them is the idea that they're going to get $10,000 worth of exposure for a $500 sponsorship. People don't trust that. The value should be legitimate, should be real, should coerce with what you really have to sell.
That should all match up.
Yeah.
And another thing too, timing is very important on this too. So many racers are real bad about letting the season get over with, and then they start working on their sponsorship for next year. A lot of companies today are starting by August or September in their planning. So most teams really start way too late.
Yeah, they do. And so find out when those ad council meetings are going to be, if that's what you're going to be involved in. Offer to make a presentation. Be part of the program. Be part of their endeavor. Bring your car to the ad council. You know, you can set it out. A lot of these guys do it at a hotel conference room. Bring the car, set it out in front of the hotel, let everybody see it as they walk in. And then when you come out to do your presentation, they'll know that you're active in what you do.
And don't expect the first one to fall through. I mean, you have to have a couple of them going at one time and pick the better of maybe two, or say, okay, we'll sponsor you. We'll pick the better of the two, or maybe even, you know, the hood and the rear quarter panel, both. Maybe you can get both. You know, it's not just a one-shot deal. Next year I'll try it again, you know.
Hustle your sponsorship package and program as much as you hustle your race car.
Exactly. And you know, something I've done too that is a real nice door opener is costs a little bit of money, but you know, get a model and actually decal it up just to look with their sponsorship name on it.
Sure.
Send that with proposal.
Yeah.
And you know, they'll set that on their desk and they'll, you know, kind of remind them every now and then. Of course, you only want to do that primarily if you've got somebody that's, you know, pretty interested. But it really works good. I've used it a lot of times.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week. We'll see you next week on Racing TV.